Appreciate being here. Nice to be back in Phoenix. I used to live in Tucson down the road a piece. You know how people say security is a journey? It's a journey. And I keep hearing the kids in the back seat saying, when are we going to get there? Chances are we're not going to get there, but we do need destinations along the way, and Security 3.0 is a way of forcing strategic planning about security, getting above this history that we've had of constant escalation, an attempt to get ahead of being reactive and defensive. And we like to say it's the future of information security. It's kind of an essential thing to do. It looks like our hosts are actually moving in that direction, which is nice. First, a brief commercial of where we come from. Yeah, that looks right. We've had tectonic shifts in the firmament of technology. And many of you look like you have gray hair and gray beards, as do I, and may remember the mainframe. You remember the mainframe? Remember the priesthood who attends to the mainframe, and how the network was these wires underneath the floor, and security consisted of RACF and ACF2 and top secret, and the people that held control of the mainframe were basically good at saying one word, and that word was no, right? But we did reach due care, due diligence, commercially reasonable security, which I'll define in a moment. But then things kept happening. The PC came into the office around, pick a date, 1980, 1981, 1982. I remember lugging in my K-Pro computer, kind of like an Osborne, only heavier, and plunking on my desk and gaining personal productivity, departmental productivity, corporate productivity, and the IT guy would walk by and trip and say, "What the heck are you doing?" So, this is my personal computer. Personal computer, it's like a mainframe on the desk. And he said, "Do you have corporate information on there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, oh, he walks away scratching his head and the little word security flashing in his mind. And then me and my buddy, we decided to share our budget and buy a printer and connect the printer and our computers on a local area network. So we had local area networks administered by amateurs. And the IT department would go by and trip on that wire and go, "What are you doing?" "Oh, we're sharing data and sharing this printer." They go, "Oh, is that secure?" Then we had client server, little piece of code here, big piece of code over there. And then we had the big bang of the internet, the commercialized internet, commercial internet exchange. Here's a great idea. Let's take a network of networks that no one owns, no one controls, has nothing inherent in the way of security, and let's build our critical business infrastructure on that. Why wouldn't you do that? So we did that, and of course, at that point, the IT department almost threw up its hands. And then we had wireless, and then web services, and then Web 2.0. And one of the problems is we don't really know what the next wave of technology is going to be. Here we have some place markers, the HyperX, the Quantum Y, the Nano Z. You're all familiar with those technologies. And as we move further and further along, we accept, see the line going down, we accept more risk. We accept more risk because we've gained productivity, we've gained flexibility, we've gained mobility, and so we now have to throw money at it to make sure that that stuff is secure. And it's not just these waves of technology that are coming through our enterprises, all these wonderful management fads, you know, business process reengineering, electronic commerce. It's not security anymore, by the way. I've heard from some of our staff, it's not security anymore, it's risk management. So things keep evolving. And we worry about the next big thing. And then you see that little line going up with a question mark. Well, it seems that compliance has been trying to get us back to the original definition of due care, due diligence, commercially reasonable security, whatever the heck that is. And we couldn't stop these new technologies from coming into the enterprise. We didn't really want to stop them, but nevertheless, we were facing some challenges and remain facing some challenges about these waves of technology. The next events, social networks, virtualization, consumerization of IT, points that we'll talk about in a moment. So for Security 3.0, we're trying to get above and beyond this game of whack the mole or splat the rat. That's the British one. I don't know, maybe you have someone from around the world. And so, you know, you see a worm, bang. You see a virus, slap it down, right? And it may be fun to play this game, but no one ever really wins at whack-the-mole. And so we want to move from just splatting the threats and the inconsistent policies that result from all of the various point solutions targeting one particular problem, and move above and beyond that, and more than that, to get to the point where we're playing a chess game, essentially, to narrow the angle of attack, to make your opponent move to the area of the board where you have strengths. And it's a tougher game to play. I mean, the rook, the king, the queen, each of them move differently. And so to get to Security 3.0, we have to start taking steps today, in part to reduce the costs of dealing with today's mature threats, so that funding, the funding that has been applied to things like viruses and worms and denial of service attacks, so that funding is freed up to address the new wave, the new systems, the new business processes that are being built today, the new trends. And we can't really wait for the next iPhone to sneak its way into the enterprise with generally weak security. We can't wait for the next Facebook to come in where people start using it to build corporate networks. We can't wait for the next blogging, which may reveal information about the corporation. We can't wait for the next virtual worlds and Second Life, where people are setting up storefronts and where crimes are taking place. We can't wait for the next wiki. You can't wait for the next YouTube. You can't wait for the next Skype. You get the idea here that we're really have to sort of figure strategically, okay, what's next? And how do I get ahead of the curve? So to review, Security 1.0, the mainframe era, top secret, gurus in the basement, the IT people saying no. And then we got the big bang of the internet with what came along with it of identity thieves and viruses and worms, and all these point solutions where the IT department got tired of saying no. They got tired of saying no. And they were dealing with things like, hyperventilating marketing people going, we have to get on the internet. We don't want to be Amazon. And somewhere in the back of the room, the project team is all together. They're all excited. We're going to launch our new electronic commerce site. We're going to beat Amazon at their game. And some guy in the back raises his hand and says, is it secure? And so you take a step back and you spend 1/3 more budget, 1/3 more time to make it secure. And that's still happening today. 2 weeks before Valentine's Day this year, we had an inquiry from a greeting card company was about to launch a website for kids to send Valentines to one another. They had to pre-register, and they wanted to make sure that child predators wouldn't get onto their website. This is 2 weeks before Valentine's Day, and they're asking Gardner, what should we do? Duh, somebody in the back of the room raised their hands and said, is it secure? Then we have Security 3.0, skating ahead of the puck, shooting ahead of the duck. We have to try these different things because we speak internationally, and so it becomes a little difficult to find the right phrase. But adaptive security processes, architectures, controls, keeping up with the user by building security in. So how do you build security in? Well, secure development of your applications, buying secure applications, and this is tricky because application developers, we've been in the biggest beta test in history. We call it Windows. And yes, the acquisition of technology and the acquisition of services that help make the enterprise secure. Now, the wave chart had that line, due care, due diligence. Whoa, stop that. What is reasonable security? What is due care? Well, the factors to be considered are, what's the state of the art? What's the state of the technology? Where are things at? Yeah, we've had point solutions, and then we had suites that were loosely integrated, and now we're moving towards more integrated solutions. What's the expense? And to determine the proper level of investment, you have to do a risk evaluation. We'll get back to that point in a moment. What's the likelihood of failure? What would happen if there was a failure? Would we be embarrassed? Would I lose my job? Would we go out of business, as some companies have, as a result of security problems? What are the known anticipated security threats? We know about hackers. We know about insiders. We're going to hear a lot more about that. We know about industrial espionage. What's the availability of standards? Let's catch up here. Well, the beautiful thing about standards is, there are so many to choose from. We got your COSO, you got your COBIT, you got your ISO 17799, and it has a new number, I lost track, ITL, you got a bunch of security standards. What are best practices? What are other people doing in the industry to protect their enterprise? And finally, what does the auditor say? what does the risk board say? And so we have this definition of reasonable security, which is kind of like the definition of pornography, right? You know it when you see it. There are a number of elements that make up due care, due diligence, commercially reasonable security. Let's put this into an e-business context. Here we have the supplier on the left-hand side of the chart, and the customer on the right-hand side of the chart, and a bunch of business processes that take place between simpatico organizations within the customer and within the supplier. They're talking to each other all the time, and it begins early on with collaborative commerce, the sharing of designs, the discussion of marketing events, and the like. Think of CAD/CAM files being shipped across the Great Divide. Then we have marketing, e-commerce activities, electronic catalogs. What do you got? How much is it? Where is it? When can I have it? And then you have the actual transactions of purchasing, hopefully in an EDI format, purchase orders and things like that. Then we have to pay for it, hopefully through electronic funds transfer, conversation taking place between receivables and payables. Then we got to get the product delivered, whether it's electronic or physical. You got to get it to the person, so you have logistics, supply chain management. And after the sale is done, and after the product is delivered, then you have post-sales activity, customer relationship management. And each and every one of these things that takes place between simpatico departments within a company or within an agency carries with it some element of information security risk that we highlight in the center here. Would it cause you a problem to find out if you're in manufacturing that your CAD/CAM designs that you're sharing with your partners so they can shave a little bit off here and cut the weight of that and try a new material here, that maybe they were sharing those with some of your direct competitors that they also work with? Well, yeah, we think that would cause you a problem. Would it cause you a problem to discover that your electronic catalog, someone hacked into it and changed all the parts numbers, so you got all this manual effort to correct all of these mistaken orders? Or would it cause you a problem to discover that purchase orders and invoices were being purloined for the value on the purchase order? How much are they selling that for? We got to know. So people would go and spy on you to find out. Or if someone changed the pay to field on an electronic funds transfer, or moved a decimal point, would that cause you a problem? Yeah, we think that would cause you a problem. Or what if bad guys paid someone off inside your organization to access your advanced shipping notices, your car location messages, your logistics messages, and sent bad guys out with guns on a lonely highway in the desert in Arizona and hijacked a truck of high-value cargo, be it computer chips or cigarettes or whatever? We think that would cause you a problem. And would it cause you a problem if you're dealing particularly with consumers, but also on a business-to-business basis? Would it cause you a problem to discover that some of the sensitive information you may have collected about your customers was now being used for identity theft or for other reasons, nefarious reasons? We think that would cause you a problem. And so we have these communication links taking place between companies as well as within the company up and down the stack that need to be looked at in terms of how much risk is involved here. The nature of electronic commerce extends us to untested platforms externally, and if you're not prepared to support outside users on core systems, well, maybe you got a problem. Now, I know some of the other speakers are going to remind you of some of these ongoing stories. I'm not going to dwell on them. We all know of the horror stories that have taken place of someone being fired at Ohio University. Oops, sorry about that. Or laptops stolen with 27 million veterans records. Thanks for service to your country. And now let's make sure that you haven't had your identity stolen. I have to confess that within Gardner, in our security team, when the MySpace worm came, which was in the form of an instant message on AOL Instant Messenger, all right, check out I need your picture for my MySpace, click here. Yeah, one of our people did click here, and we all got, this aberrant message. It's kind of human nature, and all the rest of it. And if you are involved with the InfraGard, which is sponsored or supported by the FBI, you may be familiar with some of the things that they've been posting. So the point is that bad things keep happening, and we define security as three things: keeping the bad guys out, letting the good guys in, and keeping the wheels on. The bad stuff keeps happening, and this is where we spend the most time, energy, and money. I believe Ira Winkler will be speaking about perhaps, I don't want to speak for him, corporate espionage as one of the threats. And I've used this slide for a number of years, and one time I got called upon by SWIFT, said, that thing in 1991? Never happened. Well, it was reported that SWIFT was hacked into by the German Project Rehab and did access information. And now we get incensed that the US government is trying to get the telecom providers, which by the way includes people like Google and Yahoo and all the rest of them, to pony up their records so that we can check on national security issues. And what else? So the French did track encrypted satellite transmissions when Boeing was discussing test data. Why would they do that? Well, Boeing, this was a while ago, Boeing just lost a contract to a consortium, including Airbus, and other things have happened in the corporate espionage world. Now, if you're in the world of oil exploration, you're spending a lot of money digging holes and gathering research data on what might be under the ground and is it worth drilling a regular oil well. If you're in electronics, you're designing new components. If you're in anything dealing with research and development, the stuff you're dealing with has a high intellectual value. Your intellectual property is extremely valuable. Your marketing plans, your pricing plans, all of that. And so you know that that's sensitive. Whoops, back up. Gave away the punchline, that one. So we have this cyber threat hype cycle, and I apologize, we don't have the new one yet. We're converting this into a different format. And what this does, on the left side, bottom, is when does a new threat emerge? And then in the middle is the peak of inflated hyperbole, when everyone seems to be talking about this particular threat. And then we go through this trough of complacency. Yeah, we know. We're going to deal with it. And then we wake up a little bit and say, we got tools now, we can work with it, we can deal with it. And then the plateau of permanent annoyance, which is the white noise of stuff that keeps coming at us. So why care? Why care how things are rated by the leading market research and consulting firm and information technology? Why care how we rate these things or how you rate these things? Well, the point is that if you invest too early, you might be spending too much money. You might be getting immature technology. You might be dealing with small emerging companies that haven't quite got the act together. If you invest too late, you've left your company vulnerable. And so you got to find the sweet spot of when to invest. We recommend taking the approach that when things are early stage, understand what they're about. You have RFID initiatives. Are there any security risks that you really need to be concerned about? And then we look at solutions. React and contain a problem. And then we ideally want to toss it over the wall to infrastructure and operations. Why? Because it's going to be much more efficient to have operations handle things like, managing our firewalls and doing some routine things rather than have expensive talent from the security team doing that. So it's a way of looking at investment. The ideal is to reduce costs in dealing with mature, well-understood threats so that that funding can then be used to deal with the emerging threats in this Security 3.0 world. The early stage, research in the skunk works. Later stages, dealing with things with hopefully mature products and services. So the next waves, you've heard about this thing called virtualization, hypervisors, multiple operating systems, back up, all of that. We continue to see convergence continuing, as we heard earlier, of how the various products are being brought together under a single unified management console. We'll continue to see convergence there. We'll see some evidence of cyber and physical security integration, beginning with projects for building access and network access. We'll continue to see the consumerization of IT, people bringing in their own PCs to work or using their own PCs from home for remote access, wanting to use the iPhone, wanting to use blogs, wanting to use Second Life, social network attacks coming, virtual world risks, and quantum cryptanalysis at some point. That's probably 10, 15 years away, but it's an interesting one. When we get to quantum computing, one of the first projects we think that's going to be funded is quantum cryptanalysis to hack all of the security, all of the encryption that we have today, and make us buy quantum cryptographic tools. The threats have matured over time. In the early days, it was kids. It was the proverbial 16-year-old pimply-faced boy who couldn't get a date on Saturday night, and he basically knocked on your corporate, sorry if that was you, he knocked on the door. He dialed into the modem pool, and guess what it would say? Welcome! So he walked right in. And it's kind of equivalent to somebody, breaking into your house because it has a welcome mat on the front door, right? And going down to your basement and admiring your network infrastructure in the form of your piping, your electricity. Oh, look at that jousters over there that's supporting that wall there. It's almost tempting to forgive the experimenters because they're kids and they just want to learn. But you wouldn't really absolve someone who broke into your house, who examined your infrastructure from the work they were doing. Then we had vandalism, motivated by various things, and hacktivism, politically motivated hacktivism. Right after 9/11, just about every Arabian site was attacked by U.S. patriots, understandable, but we see a bit of activity there and hacktivism continuing. The growth industry is cybercrime. Targeted attacks, going after individual data, going after corporate data, going after information that is fungible, that is saleable, that will bring money in. That's where the growth is. As for information warfare on a nation-to-nation or other basis, okay, it's hard to imagine Osama in a cave with a laptop really causing us much of a problem. This is either cybercrime or hacktivism. And when we talk about the definition of information warfare, it's killing people through technology. No evidence of that happening, and very difficult to pull off. Digital Pearl Harbors. The sky is falling, right? Anyway, we've asked over the course of time people to tell us, what do you think is the value of information technology? Is it a return on investment? And that's a trick question. Return on investment is something that everyone who's gone to a business school or taken a course in business learns. Oh, what's my return on investment? We got to cross that one off the list. What really information security is a cost of doing business. It's like heating, lighting, air conditioning. It's something you got to do. You lock the door. It's a cost of doing business. You don't really expect a return, or it could be looked at as an insurance policy. Insurance against fines, insurance against embarrassment, insurance against the loss of customer confidence. Now, you could get return on investment. There are some projects that can reduce your costs of compliance, reporting compliance. There are projects that can reduce your cost of things like, password resets. So there can be some return on investment, but it's not really something that's leading the market. We see that these things tend to map towards letting the good guys in, granting access, identity and access management, keeping the bad guys out, firewalls, antivirus, anti-spam, and keeping the wheels on. Business continuity management, patch management. Anyone here know anything about patching? Vulnerability management, and all the rest of it. Now, this survey was done in July of 2005. We did the survey again last June, and we found pretty much the same results. In fact, the cost of doing business is a greater appreciation, and people are getting the message that return on investment is not something to take a look at. We asked over the course of time, well, is your information security better or worse than it was 1 year ago? And people are saying, yeah, it's better. Of course it's better. We're working at it hard. Now, last year, security dropped down the list of CIO concerns. We've interpreted that and we analyzed that as being, well, we spent a lot of money on security to be in compliance with fill-in-the-blanks regulation, be it HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, whatever. And so now we felt there was a need, or we could coast for a year. So security fell down the list and people got all upset. Huh, security is no longer important. Well, the latest survey puts security back up on number 2 on the CIO list. So that's happened. Survey from last summer, yeah, we're a lot better. Well, this leads to an interesting question. If the battle is over and if you're safer now than you were 1 year ago, how can you ask for more money or even the same amount of money that you got last year? Well, there's a couple of ways of answering that question. One is, well, we need to remediate some problem areas we've identified in our audits, and therefore we need additional funding. Or we need to replace obsolete solutions to remain safe. Or, well, there's some specific new security projects that show some promising benefits over the long term, how we can save some money. Or the organization is consolidating functions with security management which will offer long-term benefits and cost reduction. And finally, the last reason to how to answer the question, if you're safer now, how can you ask for more money, is, well, we got to justify our jobs. That's not an acceptable answer. Return on investment. Well, the business view of return on investment is financial. But when you go ask for more money, try not to talk in those terms. We suggest a cost-benefit analysis. Security and compliance measures are primarily taken to prevent or reduce or compensate for future negative events. I kind of dropped a little word earlier before. That's no longer security, it's risk management. I'm not sure I fully agree with that, but risk mitigation might have some value, does have some value, obviously, but it's difficult to quantify that. You can guess. So you take risk mitigation, any return on investment that may be possible, other benefits such as enhanced user experience, better customer support, market differentiation, that gives you an expected value. And then you could take your project costs, expected costs, through your cost-benefit analysis, which helps make a decision of how much we should spend. And you got to do this with some credibility and speak the language of management. How mature is your organization? This is a chart we got when we bought Metagroup about 2 years ago. Still having trouble figuring out what it is. Oh, there it is. Right on the top, blissful ignorance. We figure about 20% of the market is in the blissful ignorance phase. And you see the blue line, that's kind of a suggestion of how much of the IT budget should be spent, can be spent on security. We do surveys on this every year, and the range is all over the place. The average last year, I believe, was in the range of 3.5% of the IT budget is being spent on information security, but again, your mileage will vary. And then we have the awareness phase. Oh yeah, we got to deal with security, you know, and so we review the status quo, develop new policy sets, and reestablish the security team if we don't have one, establish one in the first place. And then 3 years goes by, the company gets acquired, divisions are sold off, and you go back to zero in some cases. Or move on up to the corrective phase, where strategic programs are starting to be implemented, where the architecture is being designed. There's an overlay for security architecture on top of the enterprise architecture. We institute processes, and we conclude the projects we started that we would call catch-up projects, and we're spending a bit more money in that corrective phase. And finally, in the maturity phase, 20% of the market, tracking technology and business changes, continuous process of improvement, operationalizing or re-operationalizing things that are routine, commodity types of services for the enterprise to be safe. Now, when I first saw this chart when we acquired Metagroup about 2 years ago, the operations excellence phase consisted of 5% of the market. So I asked the analyst who seemed to know the most about the genesis of this chart, 5% of the market, that's it in operational excellence phase? He said, well, we really figure it's 5. I said, 5%, no, 5 companies. So I guess it's 20 companies now. Don't talk down, it's unintelligible to management. Here's a, we're vulnerable to an RPC-based denial of service attack. What? Management doesn't understand. Don't use jargon. Do talk about the benefits to the business. Do talk about the risk mitigation necessary. Look to facts and look to metrics of how you improve the situation. It's not time to show off how smart you are, how many technical terms you know. Use hard numbers if possible, but don't pull them out of a hat, don't pull them out of midair. Use models. You can get support for building your models and making the financial requests from the financial department of your organization. They're used to models, they're used to doing this all the time. They can help you deal with upper management and talking the language that upper management wants you to talk about. They don't want to hear about the RPC attack, they just want you to fix things. So we talked about the waves of technology. We talked about the waves of business initiatives and fads and the airline magazines and Harvard Business Review that everyone gets all excited about. We can look at the waves of threats as well. And we can anticipate that security doesn't get solved. That security may very well be a journey, and there may be waypoints along the way to when we get there, but it's going to be a long journey. And we can anticipate that these disruptive technologies and these business processes will continue to drive security. There will continue to be hyperbole about various things. One of my favorite examples of hype is semi-humorous. It was back in the days right after 9/11, and people were, the vendor community was going around saying, you got to buy our firewall or else the terrorists win. There was a big disconnect between information security and what happened at 9/11. Look to reoperationalize the commodity and security functions of your organization and adopt the process and philosophy that doesn't rely on the lone fella in the back of the room, lone gal in the back of the room in a project meeting who raises their hands with some temerity and asks, is it secure? Work to anticipate what the next phases are going to be and evaluate those in terms of what you're doing and how you're protecting the enterprise. Thank you very much for your attention.